recent times we saw, like for the COVID pandemic, we saw a lot of people talking about education, and a lot of people was like, "Yo, we're tired of how schools are going." We heard Black people talking about opening up their own schools, homeschooling, and talking about this charter school movement and stuff like that. So we're very, very, very fortunate tonight to have a bad brother, man. When I say this brother is bad, this brother has been on TV, on CNN, MSNBC. He's been on Roland Martin. He's one of the leading voices of education in our communities. He's a motivational speaker, renowned known. This brother has more bow ties than the Nation of Islam. I'm talking about this is a bad man. This man has his own theme music when he walks into a room. Can you bring in our dear brother, Dr. Steve Perry? He doesn't let us down. He doesn't let us down.
Thank you very much, everybody. Y'all have a good evening.
Dr. Perry, welcome, brother. Thank you for coming on tonight, man. We truly honored to have you. Oh, somebody muted him.
I had muted because the Chinese food just got here.
Oh, okay.
When you see my company walking behind me,
hey man, this is how we are now. We live. You know how? Listen, think about the kids that we deal with. We see stuff in their backgrounds happen. Teachers are teaching stuff. All kind of stuff going on, man.
And that's really what it is. One of the things that bothers me to my core is when these teachers go soft on our children, and they literally keep saying, "We want to go back to school. What's stopping you? Go." The car don't work no more. Trains don't go. Like what's holding you up? You keep moving the line because you really don't want to go back, which is telling you more about what you really want to do before that than what you want to do now. Because for me, I can't wait to get back. Like we've been back since the fall, and you see, like you just said, you can see in the room, you see one child sitting on one bed doing doing whatever class they're doing, another child sitting on the other bed doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, and this child's got his headphones on. He's sitting there like this, trying to pay attention. This is not cool, and we can do better than this. And so, actually, one of the coolest outcomes of these circumstances got rest so many people passed away, including Prince Marky D, but we have begun to say, you know what, I can actually do better than what it was that they were doing for my kids. And that means it's game time. When Black folks start to wake up, it's a problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Dr. Perry, I worked in community schools for a number of years, right, in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York. And some of the things always came up, because you have a charter school. A lot of people in public education hate charter schools. What are your thoughts on why do you think that is, and how can we change that mindset? Because I know what kind of charter school you have, but what do you think that is?
Well, what it is that they have no idea what they're talking about. How could you hate something that you have no experience in? Very few of them have ever even gone into a charter school. If you ask them what a charter school is, they'll say it's a private school. Wrong. They'll say it is meant to privatize education. Ask them, what does it mean to privatize education? Y'all already gave up education a while ago when you let the teachers unions come in. In 1968, the Black people wanted community control. And so what we did was a school, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, Black teachers and a principal and parents said, we want to be able to hire who we want to be able to hire to work with our children. And the overwhelmingly white United Federation of Teachers in New York went on strike 3 times, shut it down, said, you will not do it. That's who is seeding that conversation. Those same racist people who fought to make sure that they could maintain absolute control of what your children do and don't learn are the same people who are in charge now. So would you trust them with your children? A charter school is a public school, whatever that means to some people, that allows people like us to decide that we're going to teach what we want to teach to our children. In that same time in 1968, the United Federation of Teachers decided to take out 2 chapters on Malcolm X in Harlem because they found it was too incendiary. Yeah, I know why they don't want us. They don't want us to show that what they've been feeding us, telling us that It's poverty that is why the schools are failing. It's the parents are not involved. We need resources. No, that's not what it is. The resources that we lack are belief in our children. And so charter schools represent an existential threat to those people who wish to maintain the status quo, which is a system that employs overwhelmingly white middle-class people from outside the community who would never send their children to those schools and who don't ever send their children to their schools. They just don't. That's their job. That's not their school. And until such time as we start pushing back and saying, tell me what's wrong with Black and Latin people starting schools in our own community. Isn't that public? Isn't that what a public school is supposed to do? And then you take it one step further, you learn that through the Urban Renewal Act, through housing covenants and other strategies, African Americans were put in ghettos. I mean, there's no real reason why you go from one school to the other than the fact that it was zoned. Why is it zoned? So that Black and Latin children stay far away from white kids. It's just a simple thing. So why do those people hate this? Because they don't understand it, first. Second, because they see us as an existential threat. We accepted a class of seniors this year, meaning that they were seniors. They just came to us from scratch. Like we didn't know them at the beginning of the year in Harlem. Brought in the class of seniors. 100% of those kids are going to go to a 4-year college this year. Why would you have an issue with that? Why would anyone have an issue with that? Like, what's your beef? Why is that a problem? Yeah. They say, well, you take all the kids from, no, I don't take them from anywhere. They left because they don't want to be with you. Mm-hmm. So why is that my problem? They won't leave if you provide a better resource. They don't want us to wake up to the truth. And the truth is what Malcolm is credited with saying, which is if you put your head in the lap of a man with a noose, whose fault is it that you were hung?
That's right.
We can't keep going back to the system and expecting the system is going to do anything other than what it's done. And just because they hire a couple Black folks who work there, make them principals and vice principals and all that, they're not changing the system. It's not going to change the system. What changes the system when brothers like you say, you know what? I got this. We'll open our own school. We'll hire who we want to hire. We'll fire who we want to fire. And we'll get her done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Perry, I want to ask you a question. Before the show, me and you spoke, right? I explained to you my background. I just wanted to know, what is your opinion on police officers being in the schools?
So it's not so much the police officers as in cops themselves, who's in the school and for what purpose. The truth is, I think it's a good idea for the police to have a relationship with people in the community because things happen. And there are times when we need to call on you because the child comes in and something bad has happened to her. Yeah. And if you're a stranger to her, she's not gonna talk to you. But we needed to talk to you because something really bad happened to her at home, and we need that conversation to occur. But you're not an educator, and you should not be put in situations where you are disciplining children. That is ridiculous. That's just a sign of weakness of the people in the building. If you need cops to run your school, then you should quit your job.
Correct.
Today.
Correct.
Like, for real, don't go back.
Yeah.
If you need to threaten a child with, I'm gonna call the police on you, then you should stop working at that school. And maybe you should get out of education altogether. Because
altogether, brother. I've been in many rooms with that. So let me ask you a question, Dr. Perry. Somebody brought up, when do you think you should start teaching Black history to our children? And what parts should we start off at?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I didn't know there was a time that you shouldn't teach it. We were buying our sons books about Black people to teach them how to read. So I don't know that we should pull Black history, so to speak, out as if it's a thing like science, because Black history takes place in science. It is part of everything. And so I think that you start teaching it at inception, as people talk about reading to the baby when it's in the mother's womb. Why not read there? and recognize that the complexity of the African American experience is such that it's not just about the people who we agree with who are Black. That's part of the problem. We don't have to make every Black person a Democrat. We don't have to make every Black person a civil rights worker. They could be any number of people, and they could be on the other side. Until we start to understand the beauty of the Black experience in its totality, we can't understand who we are today and where we're going.
Dr. Perry, if I can ask, it seems today with pop culture, as far as video is concerned, the social media, I think young people don't necessarily associate education with success. Those that seem to be affluent seem to do it through either athletics or entertainment in some capacity. Have you noticed that people now have stopped believing in, I guess, young people, that a great education is the path to necessarily whatever the American dream is or was?
It's interesting that you say that. So today, I was having a conversation with one of our kids, and he was saying that he's going to go to a community college as opposed to going to the four-year college that's prepared to give him money to play football. That's a tough conversation to have, because the first part of it is, if you were that good, you'd already know, son. Not a mystery.
They'll be knocking on your door.
It's a done deal. They know where you are. They're like the FBI. They actually know who you are.
Yeah, if they can find you in the Dominican Republic, they can find you in
correct.
So
find you anywhere.
Yeah.
So, there's always been hoop dreams. Like, remember that movie from the 90s?
Yeah.
There's always been that. I told y'all, I was watching this documentary on Pele. I mean, that was the 50s, right? But we've always had a certain idolatry towards athletes. They're big, strong, and the like. But I will tell you, I don't think Black people have given up on education. I think that many African Americans don't believe that education and educators believe in them. And that's where the problem lies. I feel like a lot of our kids and parents and grandparents, many of whom, when you do 3 generations, ain't even 50 years old, they're stacked so tightly on top of one another that in many cases they've actually had some of the same teachers in that same school.
Wow.
And so they don't believe that school is going to give them an opportunity. So for them, no different than a lottery ticket, no different than getting high, no different than getting drunk, there's this big hope, this big dream that they think only runs through letting their bodies be beaten up, that they're going to achieve their goals. So I don't know, we've always believed in athletics, even before people became rich as athletes. Joe Louis, right, was a whole bunch of people wanting to fight, right? He carried the hopes. He carried the hopes of Black America on his back, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Go ahead, Roger.
No, I was just going to say really quickly, Dr. Perry, I also think that's also a reason why a lot of kids gravitate to the gang culture, because they feel like the gang culture has their interests, more of their interests at heart than anybody else.
So I 100% agree with you that one of the main reasons why boys in particular affiliate with gangs, it's not, okay, you talk about the protection side of it, there's that, whatever. But it really has more to do with, they actually believe these young brothers love them. They actually tell them that they love them.
Yeah, I'm your brother. I got your back. I'm your blood. Yeah.
In regard to that, though, we know, like, let's say we know the importance of, let's say, Black male teachers. All right, we've had research on that done, and how do we get more of them to become teachers, and to become sort of like, role models, or just something that they can model themselves after? And how do we get more? How do we get that input from, let's say, HBCUs or anything? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So there are a lot of ways that could happen. I mentioned to you before about 1968 teacher strikes in New York City. In the 60s, teachers unions created civil service examinations, much like they have for the police and fire, right? And you guys understand what the civil service examinations were meant to do. They were supposed to keep certain people out.
Correct.
And so the same thing occurs in teaching. In teaching, there's civil service examinations that you have to take. It's like a praxis exam is what it's called. And what we know is that 65% of Black people who take the praxis exam, fail it the first time they take it. Yet we know that the praxis exams passage is no indication of your ability to teach. So it begs the question, why then do you have the exam if all it does is stop Black people from becoming teachers? And teaching is a really good job. It's a good job in a lot of ways, because what it does at the very least is it allows you to have a schedule similar to your children. It also does, it allows you to do things with your children in the community, so you could become a productive member of the community. You get out when everybody else does. You coach youth football or basketball or cheer or chess or what have you. You could become a meaningful, engaged member of the community. There's so many things that you can do. And so the question then becomes, why is it that more people are not teachers? It's not because of some of the things that we think. You'll hear people say, well, teachers don't get paid enough. That's actually not true. In New York, it's the average teacher is making almost $80,000 a year.
Yep.
I just want to point that out. I want to stop and pause. I want to pause there real hard. The average teacher in New York City is making $80,000 a year for 180 days.
And brother, tell them how much the principals and assistant principals make, because I know the answer to this already.
Depending on where you are, $150, $175, $200.
Yeah.
$200,000 to be a principal of a failed school. I want to, again, I just want to stop. Like we're gonna have a conversation. If you want to know just how, you'll hear people say teachers are underpaid and overworked, go into the parking lot.
Look at their cars. That's right.
You got a point.
Look at their cars.
Now, I've always wanted to know. Dr. Perry, because I'm sure there's a myriad of things that you could have done. Where did you get your drive from? I've always believed, and I've worked in the gospel ministry for 30 years, and I do that because I was called to do it. And I always believe that teaching is or should be a calling. I don't think a person should just go into it, because I think you have to have some skin in the game when it comes to, I think you should have a passion for young people. But tell people a little bit about you, about what made you become Dr. Perry.
So I was born on my mother's 16th birthday. If you're Black in America and you grew up from the 70s backwards, chances are you grew up in a rough situation. I mean, it's just kind of the thing. We all got the markings of people who've grown up under those circumstances. If nothing else, you were Black, right? Even if you weren't poor, you were Black. So poverty and is trumped by Blackness every day.
You're from New York?
I am not. I'm from Connecticut. And so lived in public housing until I was in my early 20s. And my mother was on the Tenants Association in our project. So I don't know if she was a president or vice president, because there was only two people on the Tenants Association. But I used to go to the meetings with her. And when I was there, I would see her talking and asking for things that I thought we should, even as a child, it seemed like, why is my mother having to ask y'all for this? Like this seemed, even I can understand that this is like, why wouldn't you make sure that our houses don't look like we live in squalor? Like, why is that? Why is she asking you for that? Like, we didn't do anything wrong. We pay our rent. I know that. It may not be a lot, but we pay it. And so early on, I felt like I had to do something. I don't know. I thought I was a superhero. I remember one time I watched Superman, the TV show, and the black and white TV show. And I remember he used his eyes to bend steel, like lasers. And I went outside and I looked at a basketball hoop, and I squinted. And I was like, I could bend if I want to. I just don't really want to right now. So I couldn't be convinced. I couldn't be convinced even by the facts that what I believed was impossible. And so fast forward, I started a not-for-profit organization that worked with kids who would be the first in their family to go to 4-year college. I had gone through one. It's an upward bound program. And so I started one. And what was happening was I would work with kids during the summer for 6 weeks to get them to a place where they felt confident in their academic ability and they saw themselves as smart. And then I would put them back in the neighborhood schools, and it wouldn't even take 2 weeks, man. Like everything that it wouldn't even, sometimes it would be like, I drop him off there on Monday. By like Wednesday, I'm getting calls from the school like, yo, you need to come get your boy Tavon. Like, what is Tavon doing? Like, what do you mean? What is he, what did he do? And then I was going into the schools, and when I would go into the schools, I could easily find the lowest classes because I just looked for the classes with the most black kids in it. And many of those kids were my kids. And I had them over the summer, and I know that they weren't low because I actually had the data. I had the test to show that they actually were not low. And I remember one time I went and I asked a school that was supposed to be a suburban school where my kids were, my students were. I asked them, why is it that all my kids keep ending up in this goofy class called extended algebra, which was 3 semesters of algebra? So they would take algebra in their freshman year, first and second semester, and then they would take algebra again, same algebra, in their sophomore year, and then they wouldn't take another math class again until their junior year, which would be an extended geometry class, which meant in terms of the SAT, they wouldn't have the requisite math that they needed in order to do well on the SAT. So I was just a kid. I was young, and I was just asking around. I don't know real mission. You dig? Like it wasn't a big, like I wasn't trying to hustle anybody. I just wanted to understand how was the kids I had during the summer who took algebra based upon the textbooks that you gave me from your school with teachers from your school. How is it that I had them over the summer? Even if they got a C, that should be justification for them not to be in a class that's actually extended, right? Like they already passed it for 6 weeks. They passed the first 6 weeks of the class. Sorry. So just trying to figure out what it was that they needed to do. And every time I asked the question, nobody had an answer. And you know, my grandma would say, bless their hearts. Somebody said, well, if you get us the list of the kids who are from your program, we'll take them out of the class. And I said, well, yeah, like I already knew that was going to happen. I'm taking them out. But why do they keep ending up there? Like, why am I having this conversation with y'all every year? And it's just because of their color. It had nothing else to do. They didn't have, I asked them, is there a test that I could prep them for during the summer so that we won't keep having to have this conversation? And the lady was really kind. She was a sweet lady, this older white lady. She was, you know, I'm sorry, but I get that you're sorry, but like, why is it happening? And what I found out was that in the 7th and 8th grade, guidance counselors and teachers were recommending kids for certain level classes based upon their behavior or what they perceived their behavior to be. And you can imagine all the kids who were Black and Latin kept ending up in these lower, they kept ending up in these lower classes. And so I finished here. The real kick in the pants was when my man, who I'd gone to college with, who was college educated, his wife's a nurse, he called me. His kids had gone to this particular school in a place called Windsor, Connecticut, which is outside of Hartford. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, my daughter just got recommended for this leadership program. I said, what leadership program? Yeah, there's no leadership program in that school because I worked in the school. Like you was a cop, I worked as, you know, somebody who was outside. I worked in the school and I knew which programs they had. You know what I mean? I said, well, they have a new leadership program? He said, yeah. And he told me the name of it. Now, he was a teacher in another city. And I said, what's the name of it? He told me the name of it. I said, bruh, that is not a leadership program. That's a program for bad behaving kids. What they do is they pull them out of the school day, out of their regular classes, and then put them in this group session. And they'll sit there in this group for a whole period or two, talking about their quote unquote problems. Nobody's ever asked the teachers, like, do y'all make them talk about their problems? Because maybe that's really what the problem is, not the kids. Maybe it's the grown people working in school. And I just said, you know, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't keep sending kids back to this foolishness. And I know, and I knew it. You understand? Like, and it didn't mean these were mean people, but they were doing bad things to kids. They were really doing bad things to kids. And it was like carbon monoxide. By the time you recognize it, it's a wrap. And they were making these decisions for kids who were 10, 11, 12 years old. And once they made that decision, they put them in this lower track. The kids couldn't get out. When they were pulling his daughter out of the class, she was missing class time. Or they had a schedule for kids like her. So they left a blank in their school day. So they leave a blank in their school day so they can only put them in lower classes. That's just that regular garden variety systemic racism. And so I said, you know what? I could suck at least as bad as they are at running schools. I'll give it to them.
Let me ask you a question, Doctor. Since we saw in 2020 we saw the discrimination in education because of the pandemic and the resources and stuff like that. How do you see how did it affect your school for one thing and everything? Like how did you adjust to doing it? And now if you was chancellor, like we've seen our chancellor just step down in New York City. If you was chancellor in Connecticut or New York City, how would you make the steps to bring in that divide of technology and information closer together than what we've seen in the pandemic? How would you prepare if we would go through something like this again? And how did it affect you before?
So one of the reasons why I'm not the chancellor is because of my answer that I'm going to give you. I was asked years ago by Cory Booker to consider becoming the commissioner of Newark Public Schools. And I said to him, bro, you don't want me to do that. Like, you got aspirations other than this. What I'm going to do, you ain't going to like.
I feel you on that.
I'm going to solve your problem. But
you're not going to be too popular with doing it. Yeah.
No.
Correct.
I would free the children from the failed school system. It's just what it is. The school system is designed, maintained, and funded to destroy Black and Latin children. And if you think anything other than that, then you haven't been paying attention for the past 300 years. It's just the way it is. And just because they hire a person who is a person of color, a person who comes from the community, that person by her or himself can do nothing to that system. The system is designed to get the results that it consistently gets. So it's not, you'll often hear people say it's a resource gap. That's just not true. It actually isn't true. They'll say, well, in the suburbs, they get more money than they do in urban centers. That's not always the case. In fact, if you want to know where we spend the most money on children, it's in prison. So it's not money. So then the best place, therefore, if we're just going where the money goes, is to send a child to prison. But that's not what we're going to say. The truth is that the biggest resource gap is the belief gap in schools where, and those of you who've worked in schools, you hear how people talk to kids. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Like, we keep acting like we didn't hear that teacher talk to kids like that. You're like, yo, wow. If his mother heard you say that, you would get scraped.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, that you get away with that because nobody can hear you. And because when the kid says that you said what you said, you're going to already clean up and be professional. And I don't understand why he's saying that. I would never say anything like that. Blah, blah, blah. Our kids are under attack by the people who are being paid to educate them. And the attack comes in many forms. One attack is what George Bush called the low expectations and soft bigotry, which is, oh no, I don't think you should have to do this. Like, we've had it in my own schools where people will say, this year, we had a teacher say, and he's a brother, say, it's unfair for you to be given this test. Bruh, are you serious right now? I mean, you out your mind.
Yeah.
It's not a resource. That's just lowering the expectations because you think that they might fail it. What does that even mean? It doesn't make sense. We have to see the truth for what it is. Dr. King said, American schools do not know what to teach or how to teach. That was Dr. Martin Luther King in his final book, Where Do We Go From Here? Community Chaos, in the final chapter. Dr. King said that the schools were not serving our children. It's not about, you'll hear the stories of, no, we don't have any textbooks. Why? Why don't you have textbooks? Why? What are you spending your money on? You sure ain't cutting no teacher salaries. You sure ain't cutting no principal salaries. The buildings are all paid for.
Let me ask you, how would you tell the parents to advocate? What would be your first thing? Because I know, like, you want to leaders on helping parents navigate through the systems. How would you first get the parents to start advocating? What would you first tell them how to advocate for their child?
In New York City, we have choice in New York. So I would say, stop taking the most convenient route to education, meaning the school that's closest to your house, and pick the school that's closest to your heart. Choose another school. Vote with your feet. You can't make somebody love your child. And to love your child doesn't mean that you think that they're sweet and nice and kind. It means to push them academically. And that's not what they're doing. You can go and see. When we opened our school in Harlem, 95% of our sixth graders and 94% of our seventh graders were below grade level in math and in ELA, English Language Arts. They came from all 5 boroughs. 99% of our sixth graders and 100% of our seventh graders were below grade level in math. 100%. Do you honestly believe that those children are just all dumb? Like, seriously? Give them an iPhone, give them this technology, give them anything, and they can do anything anybody in the world can do with it. I'll put kids from Harlem, from the Bronx, from Brooklyn, from anywhere, Staten Island, all 5 boroughs. Give them this technology and put them in front of anyone on earth, South Korea, North Korea, China, Switzerland, anywhere. They can rock with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
I worked at Boys and Girls. Our debate team beat kids in South Africa, all type of things. Our kids were amazing. And, they were saying there's a failing school, but they tore ass. They whipped ass in debate. They whipped ass in debate, brother.
Dr. Bell, we have a question from Crystal. What do you think about alternative schools?
It depends on. I think that it's important that we have as many types of schools as possible. It's not the type of school that makes it good or bad. It's the way the school is run. So if I know that there are some children for whom the traditional academic experience is just not for them. It's just not. For whatever reason. It could be because of their interest. It could be because of trauma. It could be because of both. I don't know why. And, having them wake up at 5 a.m. and get on the train and get to school by 6:30, it's just not for them. It's just not. So we have to have something different than the traditional brick and mortar, what you see. But go ahead.
I'm sorry. What are your thoughts on standard supplemental national Black agenda or Black educational system for us? Like a curriculum.
If you could get Black people to agree on what to serve at the family reunion, I'll be impressed. So let alone getting Black people to agree on which figures are important to discover through inquiry. So I think that there's a great deal to be said about some of the regionalism. There are people who we would consider heroic who are from the Midwest, but here on the East Coast, maybe not so much, We have our own people who we would rock with, who tell a different story. Then there's those people who lead to national prominence, who come from particular areas. I don't think that like in Connecticut, we passed a law that says that Black history must be taught in all schools. And you think let's go. Let me give you a little something about that. 4% of all teachers in the state of Connecticut are Black.
The 4%, brother?
4.
Wow.
So you passed a law to teach Black history, yet you've not passed a law to require Black people to teach it.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's like asking people to come in and teach Spanish who've never spoken Spanish before,
Right.
but who love a chalupa.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy because you have schools. I went to Benedict College. We want to lead in schools of putting out Black teachers out in America. Do Connecticut and places like that, when you have my brother's keeper and stuff like that, do they actively go and recruit in our schools?
Oh, I told you why. The issue is because there's a lot that goes into this, but it starts with the fact that right now in New York and in Connecticut, let me give you a real world. So New York State, SUNY, decided that there were not enough people of color teaching. SUNY decided this. So what SUNY said was, what we're going to do is we're going to allow for the creation of an apprentice program, meaning that if a teacher, if we hire somebody who was a cop initially, who has got a bachelor's degree and wants to come back and teach math, then if he works at our school for a year and is satisfactory in his performance, as evidenced by him taking certain courses and doing what his principal says that he must do, then we can certify him to be a teacher in the state of New York. That seems like it makes sense, right? Really simple, right? Because that means that we could go to a place like Puerto Rico, we could go to Dominican Republic, we could go to Connecticut, we could go to anywhere, we could go to a college and say, talk to all the football players and say, hey, gentlemen, how many of y'all want to be teachers? The United Federation of Teachers, the teachers union, sued the state, and the state lost. And so now that apprenticeship program was killed by the United Federation of Teachers, who claims that they want to have diversity. And let me explain to you how you become a teacher now in New York City, the same way that you would have in 1968, which means you have to major in education as an undergrad. How many people you know major in education as an undergrad who are Black and male? Then you can go to an alternative route to certification, but you have to have a certain GPA. Many brothers who went to college on a sports scholarship, many, not all, but many. And then those that didn't, in many cases, came from low performing schools. And in the low performing schools, they were undereducated. So they struggled in many cases. Very few brothers come out of college with high GPAs, just fact. Doesn't mean they're less intelligent. It just means that they just didn't come out with high GPAs. So they don't have a high, and then the other way you can get past some of these certifications is if you have a high SAT score. Again, African-American males have some of the lowest SAT scores across the board. So here are all these systemic barriers in place. SUNY, the State University of New York, put in place a policy that would have made it possible for all of you brothers to become teachers. Be paid full salary, full benefits, and after just 1 year, you'd be a certified teacher. And the teachers union sued them and won.
Wow. It's sad, man. You know, we can go on forever, bro. I got this many questions still for you, but it's gonna be another date. So my last and final, this is the hardest question you probably got. Roland Martin never asked you this. Oprah never asked you this. TD Jakes, you probably never heard nothing like this before. What's your top 5 rappers of all time, brother?
So
here we go. Now we're talking.
You know, honestly, obviously, got to go with Big because he's big, right? It just doesn't. You just can't get past that. But this is where it starts to get dicey after that. I know Ye is crazy, but he's talented, like absurdly talented, in a way in which you just can't look past him. The same thing can be said, not the crazy part. Then you have to, like, we always look past KRS like he wasn't who he was.
25 albums. 25.
We have to think about, when we think about KRS, what we have to recognize is that he was a kid. Like, he was a young man saying the things that he was saying. He was that, like, we talk about woke, he was that then. And you could like rock a party with that.
Yeah.
And then for me, Chuck D is just.
Oh, that's my guy.
I mean,
I love Chuck.
To me, I tell people this all the time. Chuck D was more gangster than NWA because he really had the FBI on his ass. Like, you know, like, I try to tell people that people don't understand. Like, they said it for saying some real hood stuff. He had it for educating people and waking up white folks. That was more dangerous than the NWA.
Yeah. What people I don't think, you know, we have these conversations about rappers and we're typically talking about sales, record sales. And, you know, like, you can't argue with Drake sold a lot of records. You can't argue with, like, a lot of people. Hammer sold a lot of records. Like, you can't argue with the fact that these cats sold a lot of records. But for me, I want an impact player. Like, I want to find people who, when the game is over, like, who do I look up and think, but they changed the way that we take music in. De La Soul, for me, as a crew.
Mm-hmm. Who's your last?
I would go with De La Soul as my crew.
Okay.
I would go with De La Soul as my crew because they changed, like, they took the consciousness of what was going on in that time, that black medallions, no gold, but then they took it to a whole other daisy age.
Yeah. Native tongue, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
So,
want
so,
to.
so, Dr. Perry, anything you want to promote? Anything you want to let the people know before we let you go?
So real quick, actually, one, apply to our schools. Go to capitalprep.org. We are capitalprep.org because we want your children to come to our schools. And then two, breaking news at the final. This is the final season for Fix My Life. Ian Van Zant's Fix My Life. And so the final season is now, and the final episode is on March 15th. And I need y'all to watch that. I just need y'all to watch that.
March 15th.
Make sure, because we'll be in there.
Nice.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really do.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
brother.
much.
I'd love to have you
Perry,
come back
welcome.
again. Like, I would love to have you come back again, man. I could talk to you for 4 hours, man.
I'd be honored. I genuinely, and as I go, let me also say thank you for the work that you brothers do, not just up here, but what you do in real life. Cats don't understand the work that you do, and that sometimes I get to be on television and people think that I do something different than you. Let me be the first to say that you are the soldiers that are making things happen. So I deeply appreciate the work that you
Thank
do.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
brother.
Dr. Perry. It's been an honor to have you on the
Get
show.
to that Chinese
Thank
food before it get cold, bro. Get to your Chinese food before it get
you.
We're about to go watch The Black Messiah.
Oh,
Oh
Okay.
man.
There you go.
we'll chop it up about that later on.
Real quick before I go, let me tell y'all, you must watch this documentary called Mully. Mully. I'm telling you, get your family there. It is one of the best documentaries you have ever seen in your life. I promise you. I promise you. I promise
What
you.
is it on? What's it on?
I don't want to tell you anything else about it. Just please watch it.
What network?
No, network. What network is it on?
I think it is.
Okay.
All right, cool. Thank you, brother. Appreciate
Thanks so
you, man.
much,
We love you,
Dr.
man. Keep
Peace.
fighting the
Scott.
fight for us, man. Thank you a
God
lot,
bless.
brother.